Yeah, my name is Pianim, economist by training, and I'm trying very hard to retire, but so far unsuccessfully. I think that most of us who are optimistic assume that progress was linear, that we always move forward. And we forget that every generation has to fight to retain the gains that have been made and to be able to advance upon them. Citizen participation has become problematic because we in the third world, developing countries, are suffering from the same technology evolution. The social medias are not helping us talk to one another. It's helping us create silos. And these silos are magnifying the gaps between us, the tribes, the professions, those who have money, those who do not have. So these are being exaggerated, and it's becoming more and more difficult to contain them. Leadership is also not coming across as genuine, because a lot of leaders, most of the elections that are taking place in Africa, you have contractors, consultants coming from the UK, US, to show media what is become popular as fake, and I don't want to call it fake, but rather to help those in power on the opposition win power, making promises for them that are not necessarily what the people want, making people look like the film stars we see from Hollywood. The same film stars, when you see them after they've gotten out of bed, are not the same people you see all brushed up. And all this technology is making it difficult for leaders to be genuine and for citizen participation. So there are pressures, and those of us who want to see democracy advance have to know that it has to be a constant battle, that the battle has to be refought by every generation. It's a life and death struggle. If you are in the US, governments impact your life, not as brutally as they impact lives here. So elections are a do and die event because it's winner takes all. When your party wins election, you expect to get all the contracts, all the employment, and so. So more is at stake here than it is at stake elsewhere. And that is true in all developing countries, because people say, I'm going to vote because I may get something out of that. And of course, the people who are participating in the elections also make promises that make you feel that I better not sit back, I better participate. I think technology has been amazing. Technology is like maybe the knife. You can use it to spread jam or butter on your bread. It's good. You can turn around and use the same thing to stab somebody to death. So it's neutral, is what you apply it to. I can tell you that you take developments in ICT in Ghana. 20 years ago, 15, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, if I wanted to send money to my relatives in the village, 200 kilometers away from here, I had to go and find somebody who's traveling there, give them 500 cedis. They will come and tell me that their pockets were picked, so they couldn't deliver the money. Now I take my cell phone, just dial any of the
carriers,
any of the technology monies, Airtel, Tigo money, Vodafone money, MTN money, and they take 10 cedis and transfer 1,000 cedis almost instantaneously. So that has helped. The poorest girl who is working in Accra, carrying goods for other people. That girl now will phone the madam. When is the truck coming? It's coming at 6 o'clock. She gets there at 6 o'clock instead of going and waiting. So people are using poor girls who go around helping people do their manicure, pedicure. Can now phone them. I'm coming, okay, somebody dropped out, come and I take you now. So improved business for people. So technology is helping. The farmers are getting information on what is the price of yam in Accra so that they don't have to sell it to you at Techiman, about 250 kilometers from here at a cheaper price. So it's bringing markets together and helping everybody. So definitely positive. I think that one of the most positive initiatives in Ghana has been this free senior high school education. I think that education is the best liberator, the best way of breaking the poverty cycle in a family. Most of us are who we are because we happen to have gotten education and therefore we improved and changed drastically our circumstances and that of those close to us. So even though the government is having difficulties funding it fully, I think that we are going to have mass education of the people. What is lacking is that, and I hope that the renovation of the technical and vocational institutions will help us take these senior high school graduates and inculcate into them nation-building skills like plumbing, masons, electricians, plumbers, mechanics, and then the youth will become a factor for mobilization and national development. If we don't give them those nation-building skills, then they become a force for destabilization of the democracy we want to build. Because if the youth are unemployed, they'll be looking for something to destroy in the society. So the education, we are moving in the right direction, but we need to do a little bit more. Leadership is difficult. I think that the current president is trying to find a clarion call for seeking economic independence. I take the call for Ghana Beyond Aid as an organizing principle, an organizing platform to all Ghanaians that look inside of yourself. Get rid of this exaggerated entitlement mentality. Let's look for value for money to develop our country so that we are independent of others. I take that as a clarion call to ourselves because when I was young and a teenager and we were fighting for political independence, Dr. Nkrumah came up with the idea of freedom now. Every Ghanaian knew what to do to make life uncomfortable for the colonial powers to leave.
Yes.
This clarion call is telling Ghanaians, look into yourself, become self-reliant, become resilient, value for money. It's an organizing principle. It's talking more to us than to others to say that don't give us aid. Every country takes aid, including the US. That benefits from the higher education of other countries. A lot of the developments in ICT, innovation in America, was contributed by people trained elsewhere and people who go to the US for PhDs and they stay to contribute. So every country needs it. So I think this is a clarion call. And I think this is probably the first time that a president of this country is looking for the signal to tell us the fight now is for economic independence. And let's put our acts together. I think that if you decide this is what I want to do, you find the resources. If you don't decide, the resources will never be there. I was not one of the first supporters of this initiative by the president. In fact, I asked, how are we going to finance it? And I recall being told, even if we took 1% of GDP, and I said, don't be crazy. GDP is not your disposable income.
Exactly.
Take something else. But I think that once you start and say, this is what I want to do, you have to cut other non-priorities. And I say that we need value for money. So instead of wasting money on building a kilometer of a road for 5 million cedis, you can make sure you are building for 2. Building railway for $8 million a kilometer, you can make sure that it's built for 2.5. Value for money, and get the money and use it. We have a proverb that a man does not step into a cold stream before you take a deep breath. Once you are in the water, you stay. And let's find the resources to finance it. An educated people are the raw materials you need. The world is becoming increasingly a technology-driven country. And therefore, if you don't train your people, you are going to end up like America, blaming everybody for your deficits. Instead of saying your educational system is failing, you need to train people into ICT. AI is coming, train your people. And as you move away from manufacturing, you go into AI. And education. I think when Lyndon Johnson, the former president of the US, was asked, what is the most important thing? 3 things. He said, education. So I think we have to find the money to educate the people, general education, and then also money to train the people, the young people, in skills, nation-building skills. Because if you don't train them, they become clever thieves. And then you are going to suffer more. You take your car to a mechanic who is not properly trained, your $40,000 car is destroyed. Ignorance is the most expensive thing you can think of in the world. I think that there is no silver bullet for moving an economy or a nation forward. It's not getting 1 or 2 things right. It's getting several hundreds of things right. Small fires, candles being lit in every community, that together become a big flame that lights our path to development. You know, people say that Ghana, we are worse off than when we started during Nkrumah's time. If Nkrumah had had the number of engineers per head, per 1,000 population that we have now, the doctors, what area in technology doesn't Ghana have people? There was an Elohim involved in the robot that went to Mars. It's a Ghanaian. If we talk about blockchain, one of the experts is a Ghanaian. There is no field under the sun now that we don't have Ghanaians. What we need is the leadership. And let me talk a little bit about leadership. President Akufo-Addo came out with this idea, 1 district, 1 factory. What is it? To me, it's also another organizing principle, an organizing platform. The president seems to be ahead of his ministers. And he has to take care that he stays a little bit longer in this country and guide his ministers. Otherwise, he will end up as a visionary in the desert and alone. What does 1 factory, 1 factory mean? It means Minister for Roads and Highways. It is not rocket science that there are no factories in a district. They are not there because there are no roads leading to the district capitals. Energy is lacking there. You don't have consistent power there. The nation building skilled personnel, plumbers, electricians, they are not there. Banks are not decentralized enough. So what the president is saying is this: my Minister for Roads and Transport my Minister for Energy, my Minister for Communications, ICT, make sure that in the foreseeable future, every district has all the requirements, the infrastructure, the human skills that are needed for a factory to be sustainably installed and operating there. But this is the vision that the president has put forward. The same way as Ghana Beyond Aid.
Yes.
But he needs to educate his ministers. He needs to have patience, stay here and educate us. This is what I want and this is what I need from you. Otherwise, like our first president, who was a visionary, he ended up in the desert alone with people who did not believe in what he believed in. And he died a lonely person. So I'm hoping, and you see, I take what President Akufo-Addo has put in space as the clarion call for economic emancipation, as Nkrumah put the clarion call for political emancipation, freedom now, and we build everything later. I think this is the way we have to look, and if we look at it, then the one district, one factory makes sense. Let's organize ourselves that for every district, the opportunities and the resources are there for a factory to be able to survive. I'm not even commenting that the cabinet is not there to implement it. A vision, a leader has a vision. The leader has to impart the vision to others. I mean, when Christ was with his disciples, he said, "This is my body, this is my blood, which we left unto you." They said, "We don't understand. We have to eat flesh and blood." He explained to them, and those who didn't believe left. Those who believed followed. I'm saying, I'm not commenting on the quality of ministers. We have very able ministers. People say that, oh, these ministers, they are young. They are not young. I was running Cocoa Marketing Board, a staff of 110,000. I was barely in my 40s. I was acting principal secretary in the Ministry of Finance. Barely 40. The Minister for Finance now, he's in his 50s. He's not young.
Sure.
These ministers are at the age where they are strong enough to work as ministers. The only thing we, the old people, can do is to be there for them as a sounding board, to come and say, we want to do this. You tried to do it 40 years ago. Why did you fail? We can do pre-mortem. We are too fond of doing post-mortem. But we have to come and say, if this thing we want to do were to go wrong, what may be some of the things that may let it fail? Pre-mortem. So I'm saying, yes, the one with the vision has to be there, always guiding the disciples. No, that's not what I meant. Yes, this is what I want. What code of conduct do I want you to do to take in stride? Value for money means making sure that every project is costed properly, nothing in your pocket. Whatever you are doing, think about it. Is it good? Will it advance the cause of the marginalized Ghanaian? Because every society is judged by how best you treat the poorest and the most marginalized among you. And it is the leader's job to be calling the troops together. No. You are guarding sheep.
Yeah, sure.
Okay? I hope Ghanaians are sheep, not cats, because you can't shepherd cats, you know. But you have to be saying, no, this is the way we want to go. No, that way, no, come, this way. That's the job of the leader. I think that we in Ghana, 30 million people, there's not a viable market. Okay? So if you take Nigeria with almost 180, 200 million, added to Ghana, all of us along the west coast, then you probably will get about 600, 700 million. This is a viable market. So I think all of us have to think in bigger blocks. The whole world is moving. European Union, okay, some are leaving. The free trade blocks in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. And I think that the African Union idea was that maybe we can have a United States or United Nations of Africa. And then we said, this is difficult to achieve. Because as young nations, there were people who were dying to be presidents, didn't matter how small their countries. So let them enjoy small and then try and build regional cooperation. And in Ghana, we are lucky to have ECOWAS. Yes. I remember when the Chinese governor of the central bank was visiting, there was a lunch at the Labadi La, La Hotel. And he said, look, Ghana, you need Nigeria. Nigeria doesn't need you. They have a viable market enough. So hold on to their lapels so that together as ECOWAS, you can develop. 30 million, you are just like one town in China. Yes. You are not interested enough. So I think that for Ghanaians, we have to have that perspective, that we need the whole of West Africa moving together. We need Nigeria to move, because if Nigeria doesn't move, even the rest of Africa cannot move. We need a viable, strong, democratic Nigeria. And I've always told my Nigerian friends, maybe they should give us a vote in their elections, because we suffer from it. When the Nigerian economy is not doing well, Ghana suffers. Drive around Accra and see a whole lot of the new buildings that have been built at night, dark. They are not rented. If the Nigerian economy was booming and they were here, most of them will be rented. So we need Nigeria. When Nigeria joins, then we'll have probably a $300 billion economy, 400 million consumers. This is a viable market. And the good thing is that in Ghana, we have peace. Most investors, when they come, they are not interested in Ghana. They're interested in Nigeria. Right. But Nigeria is rough, so they want to put their toe into the water to test it. If we become the hub, we could become the hub of ECOWAS, because people like to stay here, produce here, and take it to the Nigeria market. But if we don't hold Nigeria in ECOWAS, they rather go to Nigeria, manufacture there, and send the surplus to us. So we, the small countries, Ghana, Nigeria, if Nigeria doesn't prosper, the negative side, it will see that when things are tough in Nigeria and the thieves are running, they can't stay in Benin, it's Francophone. They can't stay in Togo, it's Francophone. Yes. We are the next. And Nigeria can afford to send 20 million people. What army do we have to stop them? And it reminds me a story of a Nigerian president who told his Ghanaian colleague, these two small countries in between us, they are troublesome. We go to meetings, they want to have the same voting power like we do. What if I take one step to the left and you take one step to the right, and then we get rid of them? And the Ghanaian president, being very wise, said, no, I don't think we should do that. And he said, why not? And he said, because the next step you take will be on my neck. So I need the two people. So Ghana needs Nigeria, yes, and we need ECOWAS. And when ECOWAS is coming, we need infrastructure, roads and railways from Nigeria all the way. Ghana as a hub for aviation, so that people already, South African Airlines lands here, it goes straight from here to Washington. Nigerians come to take it, Ivorians come to take it, to go to Washington and come back. So we need to have a strong regional aviation company to take the people once they land here all across, to Senegal, to the north part.
So then this becomes a hub.
Our ports also need to become a hub, so that with the railways, if we have the railways, to take the goods to supply to Burkina Faso, Niger, the northern part of Cote d'Ivoire, and to Mali. But If we are doing that, we have to be sure that the peace that we have here is spread so that Boko Haram is defeated in Nigeria. The jihadists who are making life more and more threatening to Burkina Faso, Mali, and sometimes Cote d'Ivoire are also nipped in the bud. So regional integration, absolutely. West Africa, we have to lead because at least we have the three major languages, English, French, Portuguese, but fortunately Hausa, the language that is spoken in Nigeria, came to be the francophone, the lingua franca. In the Second World War, among the soldiers, and when the soldiers began making coup d'etats, all the presidents happened to be ex-servicemen who spoke the same language, Hausa, so it was also linking together. So I think that, yes, you are right, regional institutions are needed strongly to be able to trade one another, move populations freely so that we benefit. Nigerians, when they are good, are world class. And we need to be able to get them to help. In the oil industry, they've gone through some of the learning processes, and we need them to come so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Remember, Ghana was the first black country in Africa to gain political independence. And we've always punched above our weight. So Ghana was sort of the weather vane in Africa until a crisis comes and we are reduced to geopolitically insignificant 30 million people on the shores of West Africa. Look at the UN. Kofi Annan, the first black UN Secretary General, excellent specimen, Ghanaian. When I was young, I was traveling in East Africa, the East African Economic Community, the judges there and so forth, Ghanaian. So Ghanaians, there's nowhere in the world you go where they are not. We are obeying, non-threatening. We are not like the Nigerians who can be very aggressive. So everybody likes us. And we are also cowards. We are afraid of blood. The only time our policy became bloody was when President Rawlings was really not Ghanaian, erupted on the political scene and there was bloodshed. Ghanaians hate blood. They rather not fight than cause blood. So our elections have been alternate. A political party comes, they are moved out, and that also is that Ghana's politics is driven by envy. You are in power, they saw you 3 months ago, with not even a bicycle to your name. Now you have 3 SUVs, driving on the police guard, driving the convoy of 4 vehicles, throwing dust over us, and being arrogant to us. Next time the time comes to vote, they use their thumb to show you out. It's their red card, driven by envy. So we are well known because we have these elections and we change, we don't fight, and we rather go to court to resolve some of these issues. It's partly the Ghanaian culture of avoiding violence and confrontations. You go to any international event. When I was young and I was attending international conferences, I was always happy when there was a Nigerian there because the foreigners start talking rubbish. The Nigerians will check them, will tell them, stop that nonsense. There was supposed to have been in Dakar an international conference on corruption. The first 2 days, the Africans were being bashed by everybody. Corrupt African, corrupt this, corrupt there. And then the next day, the rumors started filling the place, the conference of Baba is coming, Baba is coming, Baba is coming. Who is Baba? President Obasanjo. He went in, saddled to the podium, put his thumb head on this, and said, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about corruption. Corruption in Africa. If you, the corruptors, are prepared to deal with the corruptors. Who deal with the corrupted? The Africans stood 6 foot tall. Now we can talk. See, so Ghanaians, we have the reputation, and we've worked on it. Most people don't realize the hard work behind the scenes that were put in by the religious leaders to calm both sides. Kofi Annan, every election, was on the phone talking to both sides to make sure, to remind them that the country should be put first, the interests of the country, not the ambitions of individual politicians. So I think the credit for the kudos we've earned for peaceful democracy and so forth go largely to these religious bodies who made sure that they talk to both sides, and the people like we were fortunate enough to have had Kofi Annan, who was able to keep tabs and talk to people. All the elections, there was none that Kofi Annan was not involved, talking to Rawlings, Kufuor, Mills, Nana Akufo-Addo. They were always there for that. Southern Africa is difficult. It's difficult in that you've had countries that have gone through armed struggle. Once you emerge out of armed struggle, the youth know that, or think, or have a perception that issues are resolved through the gun. A lot of my friends from South Africa will say that, oh, there are ways, economic ways of dealing with criminality. Criminals are criminals. The poor are the most of the honest people that you can find. But when somebody has been using the gun and he knows he can take the gun, go out in the night and earn more than he will earn doing an honest work for a year. Sure. The alternative is there. So South Africa has gone through that. Zimbabwe, the richest country in terms of resources in Africa, has been through that. And what those countries have also lacked is what we've learned in the rest of Africa. The political parties that lead you, like Moses to the promised land, they have to be killed before you get genuine independence. So for example, if you take Ghana, Nkrumah's party is gone. Most of the people who fought for independence are gone. They cannot say, hey, my friend, shut up. I delivered you from the land of the pharaohs. They are gone. South Africa needs to get rid of the ANC so that African can vote for a party that is interested in the downtrodden and the have-nots. Instead of saying, I'm voting for you because you were with me against apartheid. Apartheid is gone. And the same way with Zimbabwe. I think when the crocodile is gotten rid in Zimbabwe, maybe genuine democracy will come when Moses didn't arrive on the land, the promised land. It was Joshua who took the Israelis there.
Exactly.
So for us to arrive at the promised land, economic independence, resilience, self-reliance, we need new leaders. And freedom fighters have a different mentality than people who organize and negotiate for economic emancipation. It's the same, when there's a fight, you get to know one another. So I trust you. If somebody comes and say, oh, Professor Reed has taken my... No, Professor Reed
he wasn't there, right?
Oh, Professor Reed was trying to chat up your girlfriend. Oh, he may be able to do that. Because you know the people inside out.
Yeah.
It happened in China, the long haul, the long walk.
Right.
So the leaders are there, they know one another, they work together to build a nation. Cuba, Castro, they work together. SWAPO and all these people, you have to get rid of the other as the enemy. The colonial power was the enemy. The struggle against the colonial power. So those who fought on our side against the colonial power, we have to be loyal to them. But you have to get rid of that. You see, now there are different goals. Who will make sure that the resources of the country are mobilized and utilized for the social and economic progress of the least among us? Those are the people we are looking for. And they have a bigger problem. It will take longer for them to get rid of Moses and look for a Joshua. I think it was good because one of the winners of the court case was the red, what do we call it? The tally. You know, they say that the most important thing is this.
The voter,
The voter, when you vote, the card that comes. I think that was good because for once it said, this is what we have to look at. When you are voting, vote. This is important, so make sure you are properly recorded. And I think the other winner was also that the courts decide this. So it should alert the mind of every Ghanaian to say that we need an independent judiciary. We should not do anything to mess up with the judiciary. South Africa, despite all its problems, the judiciary is strong. And that is what is pushing the ruling ANC, that go back to the promises you made for the people. And the courts will set them. And I think in Ghana, we said, okay, the thing will go to the court. And for me, one of the lessons we learned, which have not been addressed by the lawyers who have been presidents, is this. I do not understand why in our constitution, a country of 30 million, we have more than 11 Supreme Court judges, and we always empanel for cases. I don't understand it. The US, 300 million people, 9 Supreme Court judges. I say the Supreme Court decision is law. If it's law, it has to represent the decision, the full deliberation of all the members. I do not understand why the selection of a president, the most important decision of this country, and the Chief Justice was not a member of the panel. So I'm hoping that one of these days we'll review ourselves and make sure that if we say there are 11 members of the Supreme Court, all of them should sit on the case. And then when they decide, if there's a legal error, like in the US, you will go back to them, argue, and then they will set it right. In the US, if you can empanel, you know the outcome already. You read their judgments, you know whether they are pro or con something. So I think that for the decision of the Supreme Court to be regarded as law, because that's how Supreme Court makes laws, by their decisions. All of them have to be there. If 3 of them decide and the other 8 are against it, how does it become law? So I think that one of the things that court case taught us is that even if you think you've lost an election, be patient. After 3 months, and the Constitution is very clear, the one who's been selected, even though it might be wrongly there, all the decisions he makes are binding until you change him. So the government can run. And he showed us, be patient. You know, we have a proverb in Ghana that you don't stand in the middle of these soldier ants. Or they'll be biting you. You run away to try to remove them. So at the heat of the election, when we finish, we are going to court. By the time the lawyers file their papers, put on their gowns and go to court, tempers are down. So I think that it should that be a little bit more patient. Democracy requires a lot of patience. And people should know that it's not different from selling any other goods. Democracy is a market where different voices are heard. And it says, your man may come in 4 years, 8 years, he'll be out. Wait, your turn will come. So the culture of patience, of tolerance, and this is what we need to build among our supporters to advance democracy. But most of all, we need to be sure that the battle is not won. Democracy, freedoms of the people are fought for every day. And every generation has to decide where the battle lines are drawn and to fight to advance it. Technology, the social media. Second is big expectations, oversell, too many promises by politicians. That leads to expectations which are then bound to be disappointed. And the third, the rest of the world. The world has become very small. Instantaneously, if my children have a child, a grandson, in San Francisco, Los Angeles, instantaneously, the picture is before me. The olden days, it would take a long time. Developments in other parts of the world are communicated into our hands, on our laptops. Everybody, the Androids, they are all there. People wake up, you see our young people here, they dress like Hollywood. They see what the young people are doing there, they will try to do it here. The Me Too movement is permeated everywhere. So we are being forced to consume and act culturally like the industrialized countries. We don't have any place to hide like the Americans, developed America, under protectionism. But they come and preach free trade to us. The Europeans, the same. Southeast Asia, when I was in graduate school in America, we were told the Chinese, they can never develop. Their culture is wrong.
Right.
Look at them now. So now, all of us, what is coming from outside? The Chinese model versus the American European model, which is delivering growth. When we started, USSR was delivering growth. So went industrializing state enterprises, and then it fizzled out. So outside, people may soon decide the Chinese model is winning. Forget about democracy. Planning is important for infrastructure. Let's get a king or a dictator for 15 years. Why 4-year elections? I like 4-year elections.
Yeah.
If the man is good, you do 8 years. If he's very good, you would have trained somebody to take over from him. If he hasn't been able to transfer a skill to somebody, he deserves to go. And if he's a bad guy, he stays for just 4 years. Imagine if you gave him 7 years or 14 years. So the outside, external forces are very big. For diseases, public diseases, somebody traveled from Asia, from America, within 12 hours he's in Ghana to infect us. Climate change, all of us, the external forces are very strong now. It's big. It's not the olden days when the British can say that your home is your castle. Your children are not being brought up by you. They are being brought up
by the world,
by the media and their social friends. So these are the three main, I don't call them threats, they are risks that we have to find ways and means to minimize. Corruption has been there for the longest possible time. I believe that when the president says value for money, and also if we grow the private sector, then the people who are fighting for contracts, public contracts, become very small. Then it's business against business negotiating. How can there be corruption? There is state corruption in the state level in the US. Doesn't affect the economy because the private sector is strong. I'm looking for the private sector to become so strong that when we are having an election, the ministers will come to me, like they go to the rich people in America, for my contribution.
But you don't have the degree of decentralization and governance that we have in the United States. So therefore the corruption in Massachusetts or Rhode Island is something that you don't see on the national level. But then Rhode Island's rights are protected in the U.S. Constitution. I don't know what rights in Ghana are relegated to that level of decentralization.
We've always had this idea of making sure that the district assemblies are elected, not appointed. Under President Kufuor, when we came to power, that was one of the platforms to make them elected.
I see.
Of course, the people went to Kufuor and said, how? 120 districts that we can appoint our people to. Why do you want them elected? We stopped. We've said it. President Kufuor has always said that he wants to do that. And I want to encourage him. We should do it. But first of all, we need to find the right size for the districts. The districts were made to be the economic planning unit.
Yes.
Therefore, they have to be of a certain viable size. And if they are there, I would prefer that one of the small parties would have been the mayor of Tamale, another small party, the mayor of Accra, another Takoradi, another Kumasi. So that when the opposition parties are talking about corruption, we can say, look, it also gives the young people who want to start their political career as presidential candidates to also start as a district chief executive. Let's see what they are made of, how they took decisions, how what is the word I'm trying to use? Non-family oriented. People come, they want their family members only to be nepotism.
Nepotism,
How non-nepotistic they were. How meritocratic they were in appointing people around them. So to me, I'm waiting for the districts to be empowered, not just so that we can put a district headquarters there and a police depot there and so forth, but really governing and organizing the affairs. So we have different growth centers in the country so that we don't look up only to Accra. So yes, it is there, but we haven't empowered them. And I'm hoping that they'll be empowered so that the districts will be there at different centers, and then the too many nominated members on the district assemblies from the government. That should also cease. And then even the too many nominations to the Council of State. The Council of State in Ghana is supposed to be our Senate. Who can give advice to the president quietly. We say don't talk. But they should be like the South African whisperer. If we are whispering to authority, they are not listening, then start to shout so that people know the advice you are giving, which are not taking. So the seeds are there. We only have to water them and let them grow. I'm almost always optimistic. When I see my children, they are smarter than I am. They will negotiate better deals than I can. And when I see the young people who have come into business in Ghana from being educated in the US, Europe, Asia, and coming back to work, when I see some of the African Americans, Caribbeans, trying to look back to Africa, like the Josephs we left behind, coming to help. Because look, when I'm working in the States, in New York, doesn't matter how educated, how powerful I am. I'm just one other nigger walking on the streets. But when I'm here in Ghana, I can go in my shorts anywhere. I'm in the majority. So all these external factors. And when you take most African countries, the biggest development leveraging factor we have is the diaspora. We have about 400,000 Ghanaian professional technocrats, engineers, and technicians outside. If the economy starts moving, all these people will come home and help. And I'm hoping African Americans, everybody will look back, just like the European, the American German, the American Dutch, they also go to help develop. No, I told you the last time we met that to be African without hope you are dead. And I think by a process of elimination, through all the colonial era, the slave trade and so forth, those without hope were eliminated.
Yes.
So that those of us alive, our
Yes.
DNA
Yes.
built into our DNA,
yes.
hope, and we can only hope. The young people who are coming, sometimes I'm worried about their lack of anchor in terms of ethical anchor that holds them, and a compass of ethics to guide them. But I'm sure sooner than later, when they feel the inconveniences, you know, I mean, the strongest support for the Communist Party in China is a historical disgrace, the historical indignities that were visited upon them.
Yes.
And I think that we should also have that the only way to get control of our resources, our natural resources, is to attract the good technocrats we have. They are African Americans who can take hold of our oil reserves and build it for us. But it means that if you don't have the technology, the capital, you are just looking at these resources. You are just there for somebody else to come, take them, give you a pittance, and take away with that. But we need that, and I think the time has come. That's what makes me more and more optimistic.
Well, excellent.
Education is the best liberator, and it's liberating us technologically, and I hope emotionally and ethically also.